Oi, oi, oi. Ross! You fell down, dude. Hey, Ross. Ross. Oh, great. Now we have a problem.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Nope, nope, nope. Play the new intro.
Hey guys, how you doing? So we've talked about tortoises, we've talked about turtles, where they come from and all that good stuff, but maybe you're not interested in turtles or tortoises, and that's fine. What about lizards? Let's talk about lizards. So today, I'm going to devote a video just for you lizard guys and girls. The bearded dragon. That's right, we're going to talk about where they come from, what they eat, what they like, and the different types of bearded dragons, because there is more than one. Let's go. Alright, so I have the dash cam on, or the chest cam on here today. The reason why is because we're going to be holding the bearded dragon. You're actually going to see him right here in front of me, and then I'm going to have this camera on so you can actually see me talking about the bearded dragon. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to grab Ross out, and the best way I found to get Ross out of there is with some good old tongs and superworms. Bearded dragons like superworms, especially when they're younger, they need that protein. Maybe start with something smaller like a mealworm. You want to keep the food like the distance between their eyes. That's usually a good indication of the size of prey that they need to eat. Now as they get older, they're going to transition to lettuce, but since Ross here is only 2 years old, we're going to go ahead and feed him some superworms today. And that's the way, if you're learning how to get your bearded dragon accustomed to hanging out with you outside of his enclosures, bearded dragons really like to eat food. They have like this really like innate like crazy food response. So we're gonna go ahead and trigger that food response and kind of get him lured onto my arm using the superworm. So here we go, let's get this going. We're gonna open the cage here. Yeah, the door is opening, bud. Hi, Ross. We're gonna get Ross out. Now Ross, as soon as he sees this, he's gonna go crazy. Watch this. He's getting ready. He knows he's gonna get fed now. Oh, there's one. Now he's got this guy. Look at this. Look at this. Look how crazy target he is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our hand up here, and he's gonna hop right up on our hand. See? Here he comes. Come on, buddy. Yeah, I got more in here too. Come on. Now, bearded dragon. Hey, that's not food. Bearded dragons are from Australia. I got him. Yeah, let me get this. Bearded dragons are from Australia. They're from Central and Eastern Australia. There you go, bud. The Eastern and Central Australian lizards here are the two different locales, and the different locales mean two different things. Here you go, buddy. They mean two different things. So the central here, let's get back to the cage. Oi, 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 Ross! You fell down, dude. Hey, Ross. Ross. Oh great. Now we have a problem because Ross sees. Hey, he doesn't even care about it. Now we got a conundrum. So what we're gonna do, because of this, see how they're gonna fight each other? See how he puffs up like this? He doesn't even care about food right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna block the line of sight, and that will focus Ross back on what he needs to focus on. So what we're gonna do is take this here board. Oh, he's back on it, he doesn't care. There we go. Crisis averted. Whew. Now we just gotta put Ross back in the cage. Hey, hey, hey. I don't hang out with Ross all that much, but when I do, hey Ross, I got food for you, bub. Alright, so we're gonna get him. What a nuts ordeal, huh? Hey Ross, I'm gonna pick you up, okay? Come on. Come on, back up here. Alright, so we're gonna trick him, come up on our arm here. There's one. Good. This will work. So here's how it works. Grab him. Hey, see it? Come on. Come on. Here he comes. Got him? Alright, here you go, buddy. Back in your cage. And there he is, he's back in. So it doesn't always work out as planned. That whole ordeal was not planned at all. But that kind of shows you, like, you just gotta stay calm, you just gotta focus and understand what they're trying to do and what they want. So Ross was after food, and his food aggression, like I said, is so crazy that he just kind of ran after it and jumped right out of his enclosure, which is kind of the plan, right? That's what we wanted to see. But what I didn't expect and what I didn't know was going to happen was Gru, the bearded dragon below, was going to see him, and that interaction was not going to be a great conflict. Gru went into a fight mode and wanted to go after Ross, where Ross was just like, what are you? What do you want? And why? So once he was locked onto her, his food aggression disappeared. Did you see that? I was throwing down super worms and he didn't want anything to do with it. So I had to block that line of sight so they couldn't see each other anymore, and then he reverted back to his food aggression. Now that trick that I did with the putting my hand out and having that worm up here, he didn't care that he was climbing up my arm. He just wanted the food, and that's how I was able to pick him up, put him back in his enclosure. So now that we've got the crazy stuff out of here, let's go ahead and talk about the bearded dragon, where they're from, and all that good stuff. Well, alright, here we are, back in the lab, the studio, the dining room. Today we're here to talk about the living proof that dinosaurs were real, the lizards that you love, you know them, the bearded dragon. So today we're going to learn all about the bearded dragon, where they're from, what they eat, how they reproduce, how many eggs, male, female, blah, blah, blah. But let's get started. So, the bearded dragon is from Australia. And that's a blanket statement because there are two subspecies of bearded dragon on Australia. You have the central bearded dragon and the eastern bearded dragon. Now, the central bearded dragon is what we commonly see in the pet trade. The eastern bearded dragon is less known, less common, And let's talk about those differences, right? Let's break that down. So, to be an eastern bearded dragon, you have to have a longer nose. You're gray in color, and you're way less common in the pet trade. And the central, excuse me, the central bearded dragons have these vibrant colors. They're more of a blocky head. They're just, what I'm trying to say is that they're more beautiful. The unique difference, I think, between the two is humidity. So because the Easterns live on like the coast of Australia, they can actually handle more humidity, whereas the Centrals don't want any humidity whatsoever. Now, the beautiful weird thing about Australia is December is extremely hot. Now, you think about the Earth's orbit being in like an egg pattern, orbital pattern around the sun. It's closest to Earth in December, and the closest continent that's facing the sun in the winter months is Australia. So you can imagine how hot it is there. Now, bearded dragons have ways of coping with this. For example, they'll hide in rocks, which are much cooler. You'll probably get yourself the 90-degree range there. They can bury themselves in sand, which, would help a little bit. It also helps them camouflage from predators. So that's why they have those vibrant colors. That's why you have like reds and tans and even some of the grays, because it matches the terrain in which they're in. They can blend in very, very well. Other than that, that's all there is about the Eastern and Central as far as two different types of bearded dragons in Australia. So, they are semi-arboreal, They're semi-arboreal. They, I noticed like when they're younger, they climb and jump and they do all sorts of crazy things. And as they get older, they kind of tame down, calm down, and they're more less likely to climb up on sticks and rocks and stuff. I mean, they might perch themselves up to bask, but for the most part, they're chilling out on the ground. So keep that in mind when you're setting up your terrarium for them, is kind of keep your enclosure based on their age. And another thing to consider is they get anywhere from 16 to 24 inches in length, from tail to nose. 16 to 24 inches in length. And they do most of that growing in their first 2 years. So there's no sense, like these pet stores have, they have these like 20-gallon starter kits. They're a waste of money. Don't even bother. Don't buy them. They're a waste of money. Go right ahead and get your 40-gallon setup or even bigger, because they're going to need it awfully fast, and you'll find yourself 6 months down the road with a bearded dragon that's way too big for the 20-gallon that you spent $200 on at the pet store, right? It'd be a waste of money. So just a little tip there, a little nugget. Just go buy the bigger one right away. And that's really, it's the best way to go. You'll be kicking yourself later. Why did I buy this really small enclosure for this guy? And that was 8 months ago, and now here he is. He's way too big for his enclosure and he wants to get out. So, okay, bring it back. So, in Australia, because they're so close to the sun, in the wintertime, like I was talking about, they require an enormous amount of UVB. They are like exposed. They're there. It's not like a Redford tortoise like we talked about in the last video, where they got all this coverage and stuff, and they don't need that much UVB because they don't get it in the wild. In the wild, bearded dragons get tons of UVB. Excuse me. So, and another way, this is unique, guys. This is awesome. Bearded dragons can be nocturnal if it gets too hot and they need to eat, they can find things at night. They can switch to being nocturnal, and that it may seem like well, John, we have third shifters that work night times as humans too. I mean, big deal, right? Well, for a bearded dragon to switch daytime to nighttime, we just talked about this. They require a lot of UV, and they're not going to get UVB at night. And if they can have the ability to switch to nocturnal, I mean, that's amazing that they can have that adaptation. And again, it's a temporary switch. They'll switch back eventually because they gotta be out during the day. But they have that ability, they have that in them to actually switch, for a week or a month at a time to go to night living, the nightlife. But yeah, so they can actually switch to being nocturnal. They actually do bromate as well, and that's another way they can, if they don't get a lot of nutrients, they don't get a lot of food, they can actually put themselves into a bromation. Bromation can last up to like 8 weeks, and they do this so that their body can use as less energy as possible until a food source becomes available. Again, these guys are incredibly smart. I mean, this is just, for a wild animal to have that sort of adaptation is amazing. It's survival, right? I mean, this is survival at its finest. Being able to just, oh, I'm done eating, well, I'm gonna take a nap until food arrives. It's pretty wild. So, they can live anywhere from 10 to 15 years. That's pretty average, especially in captivity. That's pretty decent, that's about dog life-ish years, right? About 10 to 15. So that's pretty decent, considering, like tortoises live a lot longer. So if you're looking for an animal that, you don't want to have to put in your will to give to somebody else, bearded dragon might not be that bad of an option for you. Why are they called? This should have been the first question I should have asked. Why are they called bearded dragons? I mean, they're dragons, I get that, they're lizards, but why bearded dragons? So, bearded dragons have a defense, and this is common like with, I know, like snakes do this, and certain other lizards do this as well, where they make themselves as big as possible to be like a threat to a predator. And bearded dragons can actually take their beard and puff it out, and it turns black. And then their midsection, their body gets real flat and wide, so it's unappetizing for prey. And on top of that, the central bearded dragons have like these little thorns on their sides, and these little thorns actually deter predators. If you actually hold a bearded dragon, they're not really like solid, they're like soft, but it's just the idea that they're there. It's the idea that this animal is not an idea to eat, a good idea to eat, because it has this really wide body and these thorns that could hurt going down. So that's some of the defense mechanisms that they have, and that's why they're called bearded dragons, because they put out this big black beard when they're feel that they're being threatened or they're scared. So we talked about their lifespan, why they get scared. How about male and female? How do you know when a bearded dragon's not a Karen and is a Gru or a Ross? So those are my three, by the way. I have 3 bearded dragons: Karen, Gru, and Ross. So the way you tell, and there's a few ways to tell, males get predominantly bulkier, not lengthier, bulkier. So their tails are bigger, their head's a little bit bigger. They're just more girthy to be a male. Also, underneath they have these little bumps right between their hind legs, and these little bumps are these what's the word? Hold on, I got it. Hold that thought. Hemipenal bulges. So males have 2 hemipenal bulges underneath, and they have these right behind their like rear legs. They have these little, you'll see these little distinct lines of pores, dark pores, and that is a tell of a male. Even early on, you could tell it. Now they do have a breeding season, and that is from September all the way to March, so pretty much fall, winter, and spring, which is opposite what we're accustomed to here because, well, they're closer to the sun in the wintertime, hence the warmest season and all that stuff. So when they do mate successfully, they usually have clutch sizes of 20 eggs. 20 eggs per clutch. That is a lot of bearded dragons. That's why there's so many. That's why there's so many bearded dragons in pet stores, reptile expos, websites, wherever you get them from, they're going to be there. You'll see them at your local pet stores as well. There's no reason to have, well, you really can't. You can't have wild caught because Australia won't let you, which is amazing. But there are plenty to be offered. And because they've been so successful with breeding programs, they've actually been able to isolate, like, this one has high orange and this one has high red, and like completely separate. And so the babies are like these morphed hybrid colorations just from all this like meticulous breeding and aging and genealogy, and it's just crazy. I'm glad to see that that's the route that we can go because they're so plentiful here in the captive bred region. So their mating season, we went over the clutch sizes. So what do they eat? And bearded dragons eat, they eat proteins, and they eat lettuce, and they eat like the dark leafy greens, and they eat fruits. Early on, they pretty much eat proteins because they're trying to grow, and they grow really rapidly. So you're looking at the rule of thumb is the width of the eye. So eye to eye is the size that they can eat, nothing bigger. You don't want to cause impaction because they ate a really large superworm if they're only 6 months old. Having said that, so when they're younger, they're looking at crickets, mealworms, maybe really small adobe roaches, and that sort of thing. Whereas they get bigger, you can start introducing them to the larger size crickets, larger size mealworms, and maybe medium adobe roaches. Whereas an adult, you can give them superworms, you can give them anything really, and that's where you can really start introducing the dark leafy greens and the fruits, and really go from there. They're pretty much a garbage disposal. You can just feed them anything as an adult and they'll pretty much eat it. I do know that metabolic bone disease, and this is something that like, okay, here we go. So you think about the life of a tortoise and the life of a bearded dragon. As I mentioned earlier, a bearded dragon grows quite rapidly in its first 2 years. So in that short time span, its bone structure is growing at a rapid pace. Now, sprinkle in the lack of calcium and the metabolic bone disease, that impact in that short amount of space does not give you time to recover. And it's detrimental to a bearded dragon. It really is. They lose their ability to walk, chew. It's pretty much a death sentence for most bearded dragons, and it's horrific. Just dust the calcium on the stuff, give them the vitamin, give them the UV that they need, and really you'll have a happy dragon. Whereas like a tortoise, now that has a longer lifespan, so it has time to get that sort of correction, and it's more forgiving. And that still, it's important, you know, you want to make sure the bone density is great and that they have this really strong bone structure for the future. But with bearded dragons, you just have that short window. So everything I mentioned here, dust with calcium. So you got crickets, mealworms, superworms, adobe roaches, you got lettuce, you got other leafy greens, strawberries, peaches, apples, which I find really curious because apples are acidic. And most reptiles in general really can't handle that acidity. And say it with me now. Acidity. Acidity. I can't say the word. Screw it. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Don't judge my acidity talking words. So now you know what to eat. Let's talk about the most controversial topic on the entire list. I saved it for last for this reason. Substrate. Now, in early years, people say use like sand and oyster shell and vitamin calcium super sand or whatever the heck this stuff's called. The big problem with this is impaction. Even though the food may be in that window, the eye-to-eye width window, they could be grabbing that prey with their mouth. They lead with their tongue, so they're kind of scooping that prey with their tongue. And when they scoop, they could be grabbing sand or oyster shell or whatever that substrate is in with that food in. Well, that food then will digest, but all that minerals and stuff from the substrate will stay inside their body and eventually cause them to impact. So, for those who don't know what impaction really is, it's like constipation for tortoises. However, they really have no resolve to get it out. And if they can't get anything out, they can't bring anything in. Remember, these guys are really small and fragile in their digestive system as it is. So it's really hard for them, and that's the biggest problem with substrates. Now, I don't care what you can have oyster shell, you can have the Vitus calcium crap sand, whatever in there. It all depends on where it eats, and that's the biggest problem, and that's the biggest concern. You give the bearded dragon a space that's clean, flat, smooth, that doesn't have any loose debris on it, and that's where they're going to eat their food, and that's where they're going to be safe. And it doesn't matter about the rest. So what I've done in my setup, as you saw from the videos, is 50-50. It's got sand on one side, and then it's got that hard zoom in makes this it's like a mat, and it's got like these fake textures to it, but that is the area that they can eat on. That's not going to come loose and get into their mouth. It's all on the other side, that sand. So they're safe. It's not going to be a big deal. So, that's it, man. We've covered bearded dragons. They're now in the book. We know all about them. We know where they live. We know what they eat, male, females. We know their defense mechanisms. We know why they're called bearded dragons. And we know the substrate that we got to put them on. Wow. That's a lot of work. See you next time.